Next, we're going to look at the Edit Charges screen. The Edit Charges screen is used for modifying any charge once it is posted from the Enter Charges screen. Also, any charges created in the system, whether from the manual charge entry or gets imported through the interface, you would see them in the Edit Charges, which is the Charge Master screen. From the Edit Charges screen, you can also do an individual rebill of a claim. So let's navigate to the Edit Charges or the Charge Master. To do that, go to the Charges menu, and the third option under that is Edit Charges. Click on that, and that opens up into the screen. Once the screen opens, you can select a patient. Either you can type in the patient's last name, which is a default search, or you can type in the patient's first name. And if you're typing in the patient's first name, just enter a comma first and then enter the patient's first name. Or you can also search using the patient's MR number, which is a record number. Once you select the patient, you can see it loads the patient visits on the left hand side. Now there are also other ways that you can get to the Edit Charges screen. One way is from the patient's ledger. On the patient's ledger, there's an option for you to access the Edit Charge. If you also click on the date of service on the patient's ledger, also it brings you to the Edit Charges screen. Other ways are you can also get to here from the Claims Workbench, also from the Payment Posting screen, Collections Manager. So every screen or most of the billing screens that you have in the system have a way to get to the Edit Charges screen. So once a patient's visits get displayed or shown here, you can see the top of the tree is the case number. Below that, you can see the date of service. You can click on the date of service to have that visit information loaded to the screen. You can also see that the case number, this case has got a prefix of PR, which means that it is a case type of private or group health insurance. If it has got a C as a case type, that means, or prefix with a C, that means it's got a case type of cash. There are no visits billed created under the cash case type, so that's why you don't see any there. There's also third case here, which also does not have any bills created under using that case. Let's click on the visit that is created, and it loads the visit information. Once a visit information loads, at the top you can see there are these different tabs. There's a case tab where you can see all the case information. There's a patient tab where you can see all the patient's info. Guarantor tab shows you any guarantors that are saved on the case. The insurance tab also shows you the insurances that are on this case. If any diagnosis you have saved on the case, you can also see it on the diagnosis tab. So this section is primarily all the case information. To the right hand side, you have a K option, which you can click on to open the classic case edit screen. If you want to review the case information or modify anything on the case, you can click on the K option and bring up the case screen. You can also bring up the new case screen from the patient search as well. The next section under that has got two tabs here, Encounter and Detail. The Encounter tab shows you the diagnosis that is entered. It also shows you the resubmission code, whether it's an original claim or a replacement claim. And if there is any original reference number that you have saved, that also shows up over here on this field. If this claim was created through an interface from an external system, you will also see an accession number here, which is a reference number that is generated from that external system for this charge. Typically something like a charge ID. If the claim was created, when the claim was created, if a batch number was entered, you will also see the batch number here. You also see the date of service start on this field. There are also options here where you can add a new line. That is, if you want to add a new code here to this charge, you can enter the code. You can just type in the code into this box, or you can type in the code into this add new line field, and you can pick from your fee schedule. We'll be looking at that in just a little bit. Next is the Details tab. These has all the sub tabs that you saw on the Enter Charges screen. And any information that was entered in here manually, you would see them on these tabs within these fields. If you want to make any modifications to any of these fields in either of the tabs, in the first tab, which is the Encounter tab, if you make any modification, you have a Save Encounter, Save ENC option you can click on to modify that change. If it's on the Details tab, you also have a Save Encounter. The same Save Encounter will show up over here, and you can click on that Save Encounter to have the modification saved. So let's say if you want to add an additional diagnosis here, you can just type the diagnosis code, the entire diagnosis code, or as we saw on the Enter Charges screen, how you could do a partial search of diagnosis. You can also do the same partial search here. You have the down arrow key you can type in with either type in the text or the code and hit the down arrow key to bring up the list, or you can always use the ICD-10 lookup as well. So I added a new code here. So if I want to save this, I'll just hit the Save Encounter. So always hit Save Encounter to update the information to the charge if you make any modifications to it. So we were looking at this section, which has got the Encounter and Details tab. Next, we are going to look at line level. So line level has the CPT code, the date of service from and to, the charge amounts. There is field for you to adjust off any amounts, balance, and the status of the line. You also have options here, which is there's a COB checkbox. We'll just discuss that. And there's a reverse option, which you can click on if there's any payment that is posted. You could click on the reverse and see the payment posting activity. Right now on this line, there's no payment that's applied, so you don't see any activities there. The next field is the line rendering provider and the accounting date on the line. You also have a yellow icon to enter a line note. Now to the bottom of the screen, you also have a line activity tab that captures all the activities that occur on the charge. So you can see the date and time the activity was done, who did that activity, or what activity was done on that day. So if you want to make any changes on the line, let's say you want to add the second diagnosis pointer here, or you want to add a modifier, or change the modifier, or change the units, or any of those changes that you want to make on the line. Once you make the change, you want to hit the Save Line. So when you hit the Save Line, that's when the line information updates to the charge. So I'll hit the Save Line here because I added the second diagnosis pointer. Now it's added to the line. Now if you want to replace a code, let's say this is not the code that I wanted to use, or I want to replace this code, I can click on the code and it'll bring up a window where I can search for the new code, or the code that I want to replace it with. So let's say if this is the code I want to replace it with, I hit search, it brings it up, and I can click and select that code. Now I can hit Save Line to have that line updated. Now whenever you replace a code, you can see the system will automatically set the status to rebuild to PR. And so let's discuss the line statuses now. When you click on the drop down, you would see that these are the different statuses that you can put the lines to. Some of these statuses you can put them, a user can select the status to put them to that line status. But some statuses may be automatically put by the system. So let's discuss that. So if you remember, when we enter a charge or process a charge, we first put it to bill to PR status. Yes, any statuses here which has got a suffix PR means primary insurance. Any status which has a suffix of SE means secondary insurance. And anything which has got a TR as a suffix means tertiary insurance. So when the charge is first posted, we would put it to bill to PR. Always the first time it is bill to PR. When you batch the claims, the system will change the status automatically from bill to PR to claim send to PR. So the claim send to PR is the first post the first batching, the system will change it to claim send to PR. Now let's say you want to rebuild this claim, you will always select rebuild to PR. So the bottom three ones that you see, rebuild to PR, rebuild to SE, rebuild to TR, this is the status that you would always use when you want to individual rebuild a claim or a line. So I'll select rebuild. So if you want to rebuild this, we'll select rebuild to PR. If it is current responsibilities with the secondary, you want to rebuild it to the secondary, you will select rebuild to SE. If it's to the tertiary, you will select rebuild to tertiary. The first time you do build to PR, it changes to claim send to PR post batching. When you do rebuild to PR, the system will change it to claim rebuild to PR. So that's after post batching, the system will automatically change it to claim rebuild to PR. Now the next time you want to rebuild again, you again select rebuild to PR. And that is if you want to rebuild it to the primary insurance. So you'll select rebuild to PR as a line status. And post batching, once it comes into the claim rebuild to PR status, anytime you do rebuild to PR, it'll always continue that post batching. It'll again put it back to the claim rebuild to PR. You will see all those activities in the line activity when the claim was rebuild or when you put it to rebuild. And you can also see all the activities, the charge, if you change the charge or the CPT code, you can see all that activities in here. Additionally, you will also be able to see the response status as well. When you submit to the clearinghouse, you can also see on the line activity the response of that clearinghouse, whether it was accepted or rejected. You'd also be able to see that status in the CH status. Now when you choose rebuild to PR or rebuild to SE, you also get these additional options. That is, let's say if you don't want to transmit it electronically, but you want to print it right off the screen into a claim form, you can select either the ICD-10 HCFA 1500 or the ICD-10 CMS 1500 option. The difference between the two is that the ICD-10 CMS 1500 is the option you would choose when you need the red, or when you're going to input the red line form into your printer. The CMS form, the actual form, is input into the printer, and then you would want that printed. You would use this option. But if you want to print it on a white sheet of paper where you want the lines printed from the system, you can use the ICD-10 HCFA 1500. Do note that if you're using ICD-10 HCFA 1500, it can only be used for typically for you to see what is going to be printed on the forms, whether it's printing right on the forms for that purpose, or for faxing. So if you want to like fax to the insurance, you can print it on the white sheet of paper. You don't have to waste a CMS form. You can just print it on this white sheet of paper and fax it to the insurance. But if you're mailing it, you would use the ICD-10 CMS 1500 option. In the claims workbench screen, where you actually may do the printing from, because that's where mostly you would print claims from, this is where the individual, if you want to just individual printing of a claim, that's where you do it from here. But typically the system will automatically batch claims based on how they are set up, whether they're batch electronic or set electronic or paper. They'll batch to the electronic or paper section in the claims workbench screen. That is post batching. And when you print there, the option that you're going to see are named a little different, which is going to be for the ICD-10 CMS 1500, it's going to be ICD-10 data there, whereas just for ICD-10 HCFA here, instead of that, you will just see ICD-10 form. Now, if you want to, also on the line, you can see that on the right hand side there is a COB checkbox. Let's say if this is a secondary claim, the status is with the secondary, and this is a crossover, like Medicare crossed over the claim to the secondary insurance, and you don't want a secondary claim to be generated. You can check this box COB to put it to the secondary status, but not have a secondary claim generated from the system. Now, if you want to add a new line here, there's a second code that you want to add. You can click on the add new line and either type in the code and select from the list, from the fee list, or you can even directly type that code into this white box, and then once you have selected the code or type the code in here, you can just hit save encounter, which is the save ENC option, and that'll add the new line. And when the new line gets added, you can see that it comes in with the new status. You also would notice that the diagnosis pointers are not added for it, so you have to add the diagnosis pointers that you need for them. If any modifiers need to be added, you would have to add them into this field. The M1 to M4 is for the modifier 1 to 4. And the units of measurement, you can select that. And once you have done that, you also want to select the status. Because this is a new charge, new line that was added, and we have not billed this, or this is the first time you're going to bill it. So always remember, the first time when you bill, and if you're billing it to the primary insurance, it's going to be billed to PR, and then you will just hit save line, and that's how that line gets saved. So now this line is now in bill to PR, because the first line was already billed in the past, or entered and batched in the past. That has to be rebuilt, so that's set to rebuild to PR. Now anytime you want to put a line on hold status or void status, you can also put the line on hold or void. There's no physical delete option in the system. The void option is what is used if you want to void off a line. So if you want to void off one line, you will select that void option for that line. If you want to void off the complete charge, you want to put the void status on every line that's on the charge. Now in this instance, let's say we just want to void off the first line but not the second line. So just make sure that you put it to whichever status that it was on before you selected the void. You just reselect that status and then hit just save line. So this way the first line will be voided, the second line will still remain open in the system. Also at the bottom of the screen, you can see next to the line activity tab, there are some line substatus that you can use for classifying the claims. You can add additional line statuses, which will be discussed in another webinar. You can add line substatuses and classify claims. You can also add remarks if you want to pay remarks. And if you want, if you're setting the line to a bill patient status, you can type in a bill, or you can type in a remark here, which will appear on the PDF patient statement. Also, one thing about the line activity, it is per line that you see the activity or even the payer remark. So if you want to see the line activity for the first line, you click on the first line. If you want to see the line activity for the second line, you would click on the second line. So that was all about the edit charges screen.